Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. We are halfway through the Major League Baseball season. The All-Star game just finished, and we want to talk about the biggest disappointments and the biggest surprises so far in 2024. We always look at it as halfway through. We're actually much more than halfway through. I think we're, 95 games in out of 162. So pretty far in. But let's talk about who has been good and who has been bad. First thing, my name is Scott. We have Ty, we have Jeff, and we have Phil. Chris will be back next episode. Chris, if you're watching, you're awesome. And let's just talk about it. The first player I want to discuss is Julio Rodriguez. What do we think of Julio Rodriguez? Before we jump into it, now I want to hear your thoughts first before I give you his stats. Phil, what do you think of Julio?
Well, I liked him before I realized that he's much more inconsistent than Juan Soto, which has been one of Juan Soto's knock, other than, poor defense and stuff. J-Rod, last year, my knock on him was he looks lost 75% of the time. And he makes up for his underwhelming 3/4 of the season by having like a massive late July, August, early September, and then he just turns it off. And he kind of did the same thing as rookie year a little bit too, where he scuffled a lot. I know he got squeezed his rookie year with like strike zone and stuff, like a lot of called strike threes, which tend to happen a lot for new rookies that are adjusting, a lot of the former top prospects and stuff. But, J-Rod still has the makeup to be a great player. He still debuted at a really young age, which is super important. And if you look at his like career stats, I saw some sort of infographic where I compared him to Ken Griffey Jr. And not even like age related. Griffey also debuted pretty young, but it was like the first 3 full seasons worth of at bats. Like J-Rod had him beat. Stolen bases and in home runs. And I think in batting average was pretty close too, which is pretty crazy. So some people are saying like, oh, his season's not that bad. But I mean, I think we can all agree on for his standards, it's abysmal. And terrible for investors like Jeff, Chris, and myself a little bit.
Ty, do you own any Julio cards or do you not own any Julio cards?
I have a Stadium Club Chrome X-Fractor PSA 9 Julio Rodriguez. And then I just actually did buy a few of his Bowman Chrome Firsts, PSA 9s, just as a flip speculation because they've come way down. I bought them from Cards HQ. I'm going to wait and see what happens in the second half of the season. See if it gets hot and they double like they did last year.
They definitely could. And so one thing I'll say about Julio is while he has an OPS plus of 102, which is actually much better than where he was. So he is now above league average offensively. So he's turned it on there. 267 average, 10 home runs, only has 18 stolen bases. I thought he'd have more than that in 97 games played. He has been good defensively. He has 2.2 B WAR. I don't know about F WAR, but I think he's still okay F WAR. So he's still going to end up with 3 to 4 WAR, which is a respectable bad year. That's kind of what Bryce Harper did. Very similar to Bryce Harper, actually. And he's only 23, so there's hope. But at the same time, I'm going to make this comparison. I have in the past and made people really mad, but I'm going to do it anyways because it's intriguing. It kind of reminds me of this specific player. And that specific player is Yasiel Puig. Yasiel Puig, he was very hot as a rookie. If you go back and watch box breaks of 2013 product, he was like the sought-after guy. Julio's had 300 more plate appearances than Puig, which is the WAR difference, realistically. Like, they'd probably be exactly the same on WAR, but Puig's much better on rate stats. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where Puig was also exciting at one point until he wasn't. Do I think he is Puig? No. Do I think he could end up in that type of player? I mean, yeah, he could. I don't think he will, though.
Now, he to be fair, he started younger than Puig, right? Puig wasn't
1 year. He was, let me look. I believe Puig was 21, maybe 20.
Well, and
22.
Let me see.
22. You're right, Jeff.
So a couple of years. Despite what Phil would have you believe, J-Rod's not one of the guys that Chris and I cursed by buying his cards. I think we've got one J-Rod card, and I have one J-Rod card. I don't know. Like Phil said, last year he had such a bad start that everybody said, well, it's just his rookie year was a fluke. The numbers he ended it with, but then the numbers he ended with in his sophomore year, wasn't he 30-30 or close to again?
Yeah.
He's 25-25.
So he had 30-30 last year. Yes.
Yeah. So throughout April and May and even into June, people were citing that as just, this is what he does. And like Phil said, Juan Soto's a notorious slow starter, which he's changed this year so far. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of J-Rod. I remember when we talked about him about a month ago and you showed his spray chart, there were like maybe 8 balls out of the infield. Now I see now it's expanded a little bit, but yeah, it was pretty bad. Like his extra base hits, he had those couple down the right field line at that point. So I think he has turned the corner offensively over the last month, but I just don't know. His counting stats aren't going to be respectable, even if his WAR is.
This is my biggest issue: is look at how few home runs he's pulled. He has no pull power this year. He's basically going straight away, and that's hurting him. But one thing I also want to point out with Julio, he was top 5 MVP last year, and he's really not that far off. One good month would push his OPS to 818 again. And league offense is down, so that's like a 135 OPS plus. So like really, he's not that far off. Home runs and counting stats, he will not be a top 5 MVP finish. But we could look at the end of the year and say he had a good year. 4 WAR, 4.5 WAR. It's not bad.
I like what Phil said about comparing him to Griffey's first couple of years too. That puts things into perspective.
Let's do it real quick to show it.
There's just a lot of ways that things can go right for him because he contributes in all ways. He plays center field, a premium position. He's got the speed. He plays good defense. And presumably he's a guy that should put up a pretty good batting average. But as he hits the ball to all fields a bit. But like the games where I watch him, he's looking overmatched a lot. And when you do look at his box scores, and this lines up with what Scott was just showing with the spray chart, it'll be like 1 for 4 maybe with a walk, or 1 for 5 with an infield single. It's just not what you want to see from a franchise player who, the MLB was trying to make face of the game before the season started.
So here's Griffey and Julio for their first 3 years in the big leagues. So he actually might finish the same WAR as Griffey. But what gets Julio is if we go for Ken Griffey Jr. through age 23 is when you see a big jump. So that's at the end of their age 23 season.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So
it'll be
in time ranges, and that's why J-Rod looks so good in the other.
You can lie in baseball stats pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, that's enough of Julio talk. I think we all are taking, if we had to bet one way, if this is who he is, or if he can get back to where he's been, I think we'd all bet on get back to where he's been, right? Do we all agree with that?
Yeah, the Yasiel Puig comp, when Puig came up, it was a big deal. He was flashy, but I don't think he had a higher pedigree than Jorge Soler at the time, who debuted like a little bit after him, I think. Different team. And Puig seemed to get all the attention right away. So I'm kind of – the pedigree of J-Rod is more impressive than Puig's coming out of Cuba.
And I want to say that again. I was comparing them because Puig was hot, roughly the same age, type of thing. But obviously, I don't think Julio is going to have the same after this year as Puig. I think Julio is going to be much better. So, all right. So who else has been bad? I want to talk about one guy I collect, Paul Goldschmidt. He's been bad, but I think his Hall of Fame candidacy is already done. I don't think it matters what he does this year. I think it would help if he did a little bit better, but he's still not been a negative WAR guy. He's been about 0.5 or 0.6 B WAR, 0.2 to 0.4 F WAR. And he started to actually turn it on. He had like a 1-0 for 35 streak that just killed him. He was like a -7 WAR, -0.7 WAR at one point. So if he had just like league average for that time, he'd be about 1.5 WAR right now. So any thoughts? Is it that change your perception of Paul Goldschmidt, or do you not have any thoughts there?
He's aging. Right? Can he not hit high fastballs anymore? Is that one of his issues?
He can't.
His bat speed slow down.
He swings and looks at. I've watched every at bat, and he can't hit a lot of stuff, to be honest. And it might just be because his timing's off. But he looks fooled. He has a lot of strikeouts looking. He's always been a strikeout prone guy, but man, it's tough when he doesn't have the power to like overcompensate that. So he has a lot of stuff that he is just aging. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if change of scenery actually changes him next year if he has one more year. We see that with Helton type players where they have a bad year and then a 3 WAR year out of nowhere. So, all right. Anybody else you guys want to talk about?
I've got one guy who's been turning it on, who we talked about in a past episode a few months ago, and that's Francisco Lindor. he has just been getting hotter and hotter as the season's been going on. I tried to trade for him in my fantasy league, but I couldn't figure out how to pry him away from a guy who was half inactive. So he started out, and in April, his OPS was 685, and in May it was 762, and in June it was 871, and so far in July it's 980. So he's just been getting hotter and hotter as the season goes on. We know the defense is always there. We chatted a little bit about how he's kind of the guy year after year who doesn't make the all-star team because with the highest WAR, some of that playing the position he plays, but he's quietly putting together another solid season in spite of what was looking like a concerning slow start. So it's nice to see him actually turning it on.
I agree.
Yeah, he's on pace for another like 6-ish WAR season, and that'll give him like, I don't know, 4 or 5 that are above 5 WAR. So he's like, I checked his Fangraphs WAR a few weeks ago, and he was at 49.8. And how old is he? 30?
This is his age 30 season. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to cross that 50 marker if he hasn't done already. He got his batting average, like you're talking Teapot. Like when Scott and I made that deal, I think he was 3 for his last 51 with like a 160 average. But the walk rate was still good. And that's really all I looked at. I think Scott had a chance to actually like watch some of the at-bats. And come on, like obviously he looked terrible, or else he wouldn't have done that trade. It wasn't all just bad luck, but he does start slow often. His first year with the Mets, he was absolutely terrible. I bet it was similar the April actually. I don't know if he was getting booed or if that's something that just the Yankees do to their own, team. But
booed.
The Mets and the Red Sox would be the next worst. Yeah, I mean, guys pretty good. The problem is like, is there enough room in the hobby spotlight for a guy like him? Like, when's he gonna get his attention? I'm banking that he will at some point, and people will be like, "Oh, whoa, this guy's gonna be literally in the Hall of Fame." Where like a year ago it was like 50% probability. A year before that it was probably like 40% probability, and it just sneaks up on you.
So he was one of my 3 picks to click this year because I knew if this happened, he's going to be collectible. I bought his cards with the intention he did horrible, which is partially why I sold his cards. But there was also a Paul Goldschmidt Red Bowman chromatograph that I needed to get money for. So I sold him to Phil, and Phil got a good price. I think I lost a little bit, like just a tiny bit. But Phil was able to get those cards, and it worked out well for him. But let me ask you this. I'm going to talk about 2 things, and then I'm going to ask a question. 2 questions, actually. First one, where do you think he ranks in National League WAR this year?
This season?
This season, National League.
Gets the positional bump.
These are the cards I got. Gold.
I would say top 10.
Give me a number. He's
8.
top 10. Okay, 8. Where do you think he ranks, Ty?
I'm gonna say 5th.
Phil?
I know it's like around top 20 for the MLB, and the NL is worse this year than the AL, so it's got to be around like 6.
He is 3rd in the National League in Fangraphs WAR, behind Shohei Ohtani.
Fangraphs, I was thinking. Okay.
Shohei Ohtani, Elly De La Cruz, and then Lindor, and then he's ahead of Harper. But this brings up a question.
Fangraphs loves Elly. That's another point about Fangraphs, man.
Well, they value defense differently.
They value 150 strikeout seasons for sure.
I prefer Fangraphs.
My question,
really?
People, yeah, commenters, I'm curious. Do you like Fangraphs or Baseball Reference? I bet it'll be close to 50-50.
If Fangraphs had a better user interface, it would be more popular.
Those outliers just bother me. Like Elly being number 2 in the league, ahead of guys like Harper. There was a guy in our comments bringing him up and wondering why we're not talking more about him for MVP. And he's number 2 on Fangraphs WAR, so he should be MVP. And I don't know. That bothers me.
Jeff, he does have a 128 OPS plus. He has 17 home runs, elite defense at shortstop, and 46 stolen bases. It's not like he's been not good.
No, but do you think he should be MVP?
I don't think Harper should either.
Okay. What if he goes 40-70? That's a guarantee to get MVP, isn't it? Doesn't that make you a lock?
What's happened with Acuna?
All right. Well, I didn't pick Scott as the defending Elly De La Cruz.
No, I'm just being contrarian. I have stats in front of me. I'm gonna challenge your position because that makes good content. So I'm saying it's pretty good though.
So you think he's closer to 2 than say I looked at Baseball Reference, he was like 11. you'd in your mind, he's like the second most valuable in terms of.
Well, the National League's not been that good, to be honest. It's been Ohtani
Right,
and
well-
Harper, and Harper had one of the worst Aprils ever. Harper, like it was tough. And he has a 830 OPS, 128 OPS plus. He has 17 home runs at premium defensive shortstop with 46 bags. It's pretty good, man. Like,
All right. Well, we should be then our commenter would like it. We should be talking about him more. I just don't think he's going to get MVP votes. That was my contention.
he'll get votes. He'll definitely get
yes.
top 10, but I don't think he'll get top 3.
No.
But with that being said, my question for you, this is actually for you, Jeff, because what you're saying is true. Do we value WAR too much for players like Lindor and Elly? Because Lindor is not that. He's a good offensive player, but he's not an elite offensive player.
No, I think Fangraphs weighs defense too heavily.
Too positional adjustment heavy.
Yes. So it's loaded with shortstops near the top. And yes, it's important, but I don't know. I just don't. I don't think that's. I don't think their formula is as sound as Baseball Reference. Not that that's great either. Maybe there could be something improved in both of them. But
the non-WAR guys in the chat are typing so fast right now, and they deserve to. At times, there's some things where it has limitations. But okay, so let's talk about Elly. He has had a good year. Do we think he's the second best player in the National League? Probably not. Probably at best third behind Harper and Ohtani. At best, right? Do we think his cards are undervalued right now?
Undervalued? Well, we'd have to ask our market movers expert, but they've always seemed expensive, and I feel like they're still expensive. So undervalued, I'd say no.
So you would not buy his card right now, most likely. I wouldn't either, Jeff. Phil?
So when we did that draft in the last episode we posted, if we had a fifth person here, if Chris was here too, I would have considered Elly as the number 5 shortstop over Carlos Correa.
Me too.
And again, this is not weighing in current values. I was going off the impression that it's like, long term, what are they worth? Like, forget about, they're free today. Having said that, he's at least a top 2 most exciting player in the National League. Oh, yeah. I can't say for sure that he won't finish top 2 in WAR in the NL based on the way it's calculated and the fact that he's been able to hold that with a 34% strikeout rate, probably. What's his average now? 225, 230, 235?
256.
Nope. He's up to 250. He's in the 250s.
There you go. So if that average falls, like a lot of people expect, last year he was probably closer to 230, and he really faded in the second half, but he also made some adjustments this year. He's found a way to lay off the low breaking balls. I think he's hooking like outside fastballs too, and it's a lot tougher to pitch to him. That's from the standpoint of pitchers in like April and May. And if they get behind him, that's when they get in trouble. So, that's when his K rate was closer to 30. Now it's probably mid 30s.
If he could play the Brewers every game, he'd easily be MVP. He'd probably steal like 180 bags, including home 10 times.
Yeah. Well, the walks are there too. So like we talked about.
That's impressive. And he is young. He's still only 22, I think, right?
What's his walk rate right now? Because
10.9%.
I was floored when it was like 15 in May, and I'm like, what? What the hell did he do?
Pitchers pitch around him. I've been to quite a few Reds games this year. They pitch around him because why wouldn't you with the Reds lineup, to be honest? One thing I want to say, though, his expected batting average is 235. So you might say, oh, man, he's way overachieving. But he's the fastest player in baseball. So he's going to get more infield hits. He's going to get more hits than what his expected batting average says versus someone like Paul Goldschmidt, to stick on Goldschmidt, because he's a 26th percentile. That makes a difference.
Yeah. Putting the ball on the ground, too, for a fast guy, not most ideal for power, which you can see because his power is really slowed down. Like he was on pace for 40 home runs, and now he'll be lucky if he gets like high 20s. Yeah. So, but the ground balls is better than fly balls, all else equal, for like batting average.
Yeah.
Higher success rate for hits, for base hits.
Okay, well, we told ourselves we were going to be a 20-minute episode right now. We're at 20 minutes. So do you want to add any final thoughts? Ty, do you want to show any market movers graphs of Elly real quick before we sign off?
This is interesting. Elly's
that is interesting.
PSA 10 pop 207 PSA 10 Bowman Chrome first auto is at $900. $978 average over the last 136 days, which is basically, I went back to March 1st, whereas Lindor is at 252 on Pop 100. So it's a pretty significant difference for the speed and the arm strength and exit velo. So
yeah. So I picked up his PSA 10 refractor Bowman Chrome auto with a crappy auto, which is why I got it for cheap. It was for $300, Probstein auction. And I made a comment. This is like 21% the price of Elly, his refractor equivalent. So I know Lindor is not flashy. I'm just, it's like those boring value stocks that pay dividends, except you don't get a dividend with Lindor. But eventually you think, you're betting on a reversal at some point. Like, oh, there's value here,
If you sold those cards right now, you'd make money, Phil.
Yeah, like a few bucks after fees.
Yeah, fees suck. All right, well, that's a great place to end. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know in the comments down below what players you're excited about, anything did great, and other players you're disappointed in, and maybe we'll talk about it next episode. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one.